All right, so today we're diving deep into YouTube monetization. You know, going beyond like all the basic stuff everyone thinks they know about how YouTubers make money.
Right.
We've got this official YouTube help resource right here. We're gonna like really break it down. What
Yeah.
does it actually take to turn, your videos into something that can bring in some cash?
Mm.
And even if you're not like, you know, planning on becoming the next big YouTube star, I think understanding how these policies work, it gives you kind of like a peek behind the curtain, of the whole system.
It really does. And I think one of the most interesting things is that YouTube isn't just like handing out money to anyone who uploads a video. They've got this whole system set up called the YouTube Partner Program. You've probably heard of it, the YPP.
Yeah.
It's like a quality control thing. It makes
Yeah.
sure that the videos that are actually making money meet a certain standard.
Yeah, it's not just about like hitting a certain number of subscribers and views, right? There's
Yeah.
like an actual human element to the review process, which I think is fascinating.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, those basic requirements like the 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 watch hours, those are important. But they're really just the first step. YouTube actually has a whole team of reviewers
Real.
that manually check channels to see if they're actually following all the policies.
Wow.
They're looking at like your channel's overall theme, the content of your most popular videos, even your metadata, like the titles, the descriptions, the tags, all that stuff.
So it's not just like avoiding things that would get you in trouble with the normal YouTube community guidelines. It's like a whole other set of standards on top of that.
And one of the big things they're really focused on is originality. YouTube wants to see creators like bringing something new to the table, contributing something unique. Just reusing content, even if you have permission, can get you into some hot water.
Yeah, and that's where things get a little confusing, I think, for a lot of people. Like, what even counts as reused content? I was reading through the guidelines, and they were talking about, like, compilations of songs, even if you have permission from the artists. I was like, wait, really?
Yeah, that one kind of surprised me, too. But it's because they're really looking for what they call transformative content, just compiling existing work. Even if you've got all the approvals, doesn't necessarily mean you're adding anything new or valuable,
Right.
They want to see some original commentary, substantial modifications, or like genuine educational value that you as the creator are adding. And it goes beyond music, too. Even stuff that's mostly just reactions to other videos can be flagged.
Really?
Yeah.
It's like they really don't want YouTube to just become a place where people are profiting off of other people's work.
Yeah.
Without actually contributing anything themselves.
Exactly. And this whole emphasis on originality and quality, it becomes even more important when you're talking about content for kids.
Right, because kids are especially vulnerable to like low quality content or misleading content.
Absolutely. So for anything that's made for kids, YouTube has even stricter guidelines. It's not just about being appropriate anymore. It has to have genuine educational or entertainment value. They even have a term for content that pretends to be educational but actually isn't. They call it deceptively educational.
Deceptively educational. I can see how that would be a problem.
Yeah.
Like imagine a video that's titled, Learn the Alphabet with Fun Cartoons. But then you click on it and it's just like random shapes and colors flashing on the screen.
Yeah.
That's not really teaching anyone anything.
Exactly. And that's the kind of stuff YouTube is cracking down on. Channels that are consistently putting out low-quality, made-for-kids content, they can actually be suspended from the YPP altogether.
Wow.
Which means they can't make money anymore.
Yeah, that's a big deal. So it really raises the stakes. And it goes beyond just individual videos too, right? YouTube's looking at your entire channel when they make these decisions.
Absolutely. Consistency is key. They're looking at your main theme, your most viewed content, your newest uploads, your about section, literally everything. They want to see that your channel has a clear purpose and the quality is consistent across the board.
So it's not enough to just have a few good videos.
Yeah.
Your whole channel has to reflect those standards of originality and quality.
Exactly. And, it's not like YouTube's just hoping that creators will follow these guidelines. They've got systems in place to enforce them.
Right.
And one of the most impactful tools they have is the ability to withhold or adjust creator earnings.
So if they find out that a creator is breaking the rules, they might delay their payments or even issue refunds to advertisers.
Exactly.
That's a pretty big deal.
It is. And some of the violations that can lead to these financial penalties, they might seem kind of like common sense to you.
Like what?
Like artificially inflating your views or engagement, using bots or other shady tactics.
Right. And then there's that whole idea of creator responsibility. which seems to go beyond just what happens on YouTube itself.
Yeah, exactly. YouTube expects creators to maintain a certain level of professionalism and ethical behavior, even when they're not on the platform.
Hmm.
If you're doing things that make you look bad as a creator, whether it's online or offline, it could potentially affect your channel.
Yeah, it's like that old saying, your reputation precedes you. And I feel like in the online world, that's even more true.
Absolutely. And speaking of things that can affect your channel, the events of 2022 really shook things up in the YouTube world, especially when the war in Ukraine started.
Yeah.
It really highlighted how much power the platform has and the responsibility that comes with that power.
Right. So like starting in February of 2022, YouTube began taking a bunch of actions that directly affected creators, especially those in Russia. First, they paused monetization for all Russian state-funded media channels,
Oh.
and then they temporarily stopped all ads from showing to users in Russia.
So even creators who weren't talking about the war or anything political, they were still affected.
Yeah, it meant the creators in Russia, no matter what their content was, they couldn't earn money from ads anymore,
Yeah.
at least not from viewers within their own country.
Right.
And it wasn't just ads either. YouTube also paused other monetization features for viewers in Russia, like channel memberships, super chat, merchandise sales, all that stuff.
So even creators with a global audience, they lost a big chunk of their income.
Exactly.
It was a huge turning point. It showed everyone how global events could directly impact a creator's ability to make a living.
Yeah, and it continued to escalate from there. On March 10th, YouTube stopped people from creating new Russian accounts on all their monetization platforms.
Oh, AdSense.
Yeah, AdSense for YouTube, AdMob, Google Ad Manager.
Wow.
Basically, it meant that new creators in Russia couldn't join the YPP at all anymore.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, and then in August 2024, they went even further. They deactivated all existing Russia-based AdSense and AdSense for YouTube accounts.
So even creators who had been monetizing their content for years, they suddenly lost that ability.
Yeah. These actions were definitely controversial. Some people argue that YouTube was unfairly punishing creators for the actions of their government. Others supported the platform's decision. They saw it as a necessary stand against the war.
Right.
It really sparked a debate about the role of platforms like YouTube in global conflicts.
Yeah.
Like, on the one hand, they have a responsibility to prevent the spread of misinformation and propaganda. But on the other hand, they also have a responsibility to protect the livelihoods of creators who depend on them.
It's a really tough situation.
Yeah, there are no easy answers.
But it definitely highlights how connected the global political landscape is to the online world.
Absolutely.
And it shows creators that the rules of the game can change really quickly, sometimes for reasons that are completely outside of their control.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's a reminder that you always have to be adapting and staying informed. It's like you need a law degree to understand all these YouTube policies, but let's try to make it a little more real, because I think it's hard to really get how these rules actually affect creators until you see them in action.
Yeah, you're right. Sometimes those guidelines can feel kind of abstract. So let's imagine some hypothetical situations. Okay, so let's say we've got a gaming channel. Pretty typical, They upload videos of themselves playing popular games, doing commentary, showing off their skills.
Yeah, it sounds pretty harmless. How could a channel like that get in trouble with YouTube's monetization policies?
Well, let's say this gamer wants to be really efficient, They use the same intro and outro for every video, same background music, even the same style of commentary, streamline the whole process.
Yeah, but wouldn't that get kind of repetitive for viewers? Even if they're playing different games, it would start to feel like the same video over and over again.
Exactly. And that's where the repetitious content policy comes in. YouTube doesn't want a bunch of cookie-cutter videos. They want creators to actually put in the effort to make each video feel unique and engaging. So even if a channel isn't technically breaking any other rules, if they're relying too much on the same formula, it could raise some red flags.
So even if the content itself is okay,
Yeah.
the way it's presented could affect their monetization.
Yeah, it's all about the big picture. YouTube's looking at the overall value a channel is bringing to the platform.
That's interesting. Okay, so let's switch gears a little bit. Let's say we have a channel that focuses on educational content, like videos about history, science, current events, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Seems like a pretty good way to use YouTube, right? Sharing knowledge, educating people.
Yeah, it is. But there are some potential issues there, too. So imagine this creator. They want to get more views, more subscribers. So they start using those clickbait titles and thumbnails, the ones I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah. Like, you won't believe what happens next. Or This one weird trick will change your life.
Exactly. Now, that kind of stuff might work in the short term, to grab people's attention. But over time, it can really damage your credibility.
All right, if a video doesn't live up to the hype.
Yeah, people are going to feel tricked.
And that's where that creator integrity policy comes into play.
Exactly. YouTube wants creators to be honest with their audience.
Right.
Using misleading titles and thumbnails is a big no-no.
It's all about building trust of your viewers. Like if you're constantly tricking them into watching your videos, they're eventually going to stop trusting you.
Right. It's like those restaurants that have those amazing pictures of food on their menu, and then when you actually get your meal, it looks nothing like the picture.
Yeah, you're like, wait a minute, I got scammed.
Exactly. Okay, so one more hypothetical situation. Let's say we've got a comedy channel. They make skits, parodies, funny stuff designed to make people laugh.
Okay, comedy's a tough one. Because what one person finds funny, another person might find offensive.
Right.
How do you navigate that line when you're creating content for a platform like YouTube?
It's definitely a balancing act. So let's say our comedian wants to be a little edgy, push the boundaries a bit. So they start incorporating jokes that could be seen as offensive or hateful.
Ooh, that's dangerous territory.
Yeah, where's the line between humor and hate speech?
Exactly.
And this is where things can get really complicated. YouTube has very specific rules about hate speech and harassment.
Right.
Content that promotes violence or hatred against certain groups. Based on things like race, religion, sexual orientation, gender identity, it's strictly forbidden.
So even if a comedian is like, I was just kidding, if their jokes cross that line, they could still face consequences.
Absolutely. YouTube takes hate speech very seriously. They're not going to make exceptions for comedy.
So humor's not a free pass to say whatever you want.
Nope.
You have to be mindful of how your jokes might be perceived by others.
Right. What might seem funny to you could be really hurtful to someone else.
And context matters too. Right?
Absolutely. A joke that might be okay within a certain group or community could be considered totally offensive in a broader context.
So creators need to be really aware of their audience and think carefully about the potential impact of their jokes. Okay, so we've talked about some hypothetical situations, but let's look at some real-world cases. Creators who have actually faced consequences for breaking YouTube's rules.
Okay.
I think these stories can be really helpful for understanding how this all works in practice.
I agree. So there was this one case involving a popular gaming channel. They got demonetized for using copyrighted music in their videos without permission. They kept doing it over and over again.
Wow.
The creator argued that they were using the music under fair use, but YouTube didn't buy it.
Yeah, fair use is really complicated. And even if a creator thinks they're using something fairly, YouTube ultimately has the final say. So it's not worth the risk. Better to get the proper permissions or use music that's royalty-free.
Absolutely. There was another case where a beauty influencer got suspended from the YouTube Partner Program for promoting a weight loss product that made false claims.
That brings up that whole creator responsibility thing we were talking about before.
Exactly. Creators have a responsibility to their audience, especially when they're promoting products or services.
Right. You need to do your research and make sure that what you're promoting is actually safe and effective.
Absolutely.
And if you're pushing something that's making false claims, you could face consequences not just from YouTube, but from actual government agencies too.
Right. Like the Federal Trade Commission.
Exactly. And it's not just about products either. There's a case where a comedian got demonetized for using really offensive language and making jokes that were considered homophobic and racist.
Yeah, that goes back to what we were saying about hate speech.
Right.
YouTube has a zero-tolerance policy. They're not going to give anyone a pass just because they're trying to be funny.
It's important to remember that freedom of speech doesn't mean freedom from consequences.
Exactly. You have the right to say what you want, but you also have to accept the responsibility for what you say.
These real-world cases really show how high the stakes are when it comes to YouTube monetization.
Yeah, one mistake or bad decision can have a huge impact on a creator's channel and their livelihood.
So creators need to be proactive. Stay up to date on the policies. Ask questions if they're not sure about something.
And don't be afraid to get legal advice if they need it.
Yeah, your reputation as a creator is your most valuable asset.
Absolutely.
Protect it by acting ethically responsibly and with integrity. Okay, so let's shift gears a little bit. Let's talk about how YouTube actually informs creators about all these policy changes.
Right, because it's one thing to have these guidelines, but it's another thing to make sure creators are aware of them and understand how to follow them.
Yeah, it seems like YouTube is constantly tweaking and updating their policies. So how do they keep creators in the loop?
They use a few different methods. One of the most common is email notifications. Whenever there's a big policy update, YouTube will send out an email to all the creators letting them know.
Okay, that makes sense. But what about creators who miss those emails or who need more detailed information?
Well, that's where the YouTube Help Center comes in. They have a whole section dedicated to monetization policies, with articles explaining everything in detail.
Hmm.
And it's not just static information either. They update it regularly to reflect any changes.
So creators can always go there to find the most up-to-date information.
Exactly. And they even have a permanent change log that keeps track of all the policy changes over time.
Oh, wow. So if you're ever like, wait, did they change the rule about that? You can just check the changelog and see what's been updated.
Exactly. It's a super useful resource.
So it sounds like YouTube is really trying to be transparent and keep creators informed.
Yeah, they are. And they also offer other resources like workshops and stuff to help creators understand the policies.
So there's no excuse for not knowing the rules.
All right, the information is out there.
Okay, so we've talked about the rules and how YouTube communicates those rules to creators. But how do they actually enforce those rules?
Right. It's one thing to have the rules, but it's another thing to actually make sure people are following them.
So how does YouTube do that?
Well, they have a multi-tiered system, ranging from like minor actions to more serious penalties.
Okay, so what are some examples?
One of the most common actions is withholding or adjusting earnings. If YouTube detects a violation, they might delay a creator's payment or even give refunds to advertisers.
And those violations could include things like invalid traffic, fake engagement, using misleading metadata.
Exactly. And the severity of the penalty depends on how serious the violation is.
So it's kind of a sliding scale. Minor infractions might get a slap on the wrist,
Sure.
but more serious violations could lead to bigger consequences.
Right. And in some cases, YouTube might actually suspend a creator from the YouTube Partner Program.
So they lose their monetization privileges.
Exactly. They can't run ads anymore. They can't use features like Super Chat or channel memberships. And they lose access to other perks that come with being a partner.
Wow, that's a huge deal.
It is. And it's usually reserved for more serious violations or repeated violations of the monetization policies.
And then there's the ultimate punishment, right?
Yeah.
Channel termination.
Yeah, that's the nuclear option. YouTube can completely delete a creator's channel from the platform.
Wow. That's got to be pretty rare, though, right?
It is. It's usually only for the most extreme cases, like repeated copyright infringement, engaging in hate speech or harassment, promoting violence or illegal activities.
Right. YouTube has the power to decide who stays on their platform and who goes.
Exactly. And it's a power they take very seriously. They want to create a safe, positive, and inclusive environment for everyone.
Now, despite all these rules and potential penalties, YouTube also offers support for creators who are trying to figure all this stuff out.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They have a dedicated creator support team that's available to help partners understand the policies, troubleshoot issues, and resolve disputes.
So it's not like creators are just on their own. They have resources they can turn to.
Exactly. YouTube wants creators to succeed, and they provide support to help them do that.
But ultimately, it's still up to the individual creator to be responsible for their content and their actions.
Absolutely. And that's where the concept of creator responsibility comes in.
Yeah, we've talked about that a little bit already, but I think it's worth emphasizing again.
It's really about understanding that your actions as a creator can have consequences that go beyond just your YouTube channel.
Right.
It's about being mindful of your audience,
Mm-hmm.
respectful of your fellow creators, and being a responsible member of the online community.
And recognizing that your behavior off platform
Mm.
can affect your reputation as a creator.
Absolutely. Even if you're technically following all the rules on YouTube, if you're doing things that are harmful or unethical in your personal life, it could still have negative consequences for your channel.
Right. It's all about maintaining a positive image and building trust with your audience.
Your reputation is everything in the online world.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I think it's really important to remember that YouTube's monetization policies are always changing.
Yeah, they're constantly evolving.
What's acceptable today might not be acceptable tomorrow.
Exactly. So creators need to stay informed, engage with the platform, read the guidelines, follow the updates, and don't be afraid to ask questions.
Because knowledge is power.
Right.
The more you understand about how YouTube works, the better equipped you'll be to navigate the system and achieve your goals as a creator.
Exactly. And remember, YouTube isn't just about making money. It's a community of creators and viewers. And it's important to treat each other with respect and act responsibly.
So in the next part of our deep dive, We're going to look at some specific examples of how YouTube's policies have actually been applied. We'll examine some case studies of creators who have been demonetized, suspended, or even banned from the platform.
Yeah, we'll analyze the reasoning behind those actions and talk about the lessons that creators can learn from them.
Wow. We really went deep on this one, didn't we?
Yeah, we covered a lot of ground.
Like all the ins and outs of YouTube monetization.
The policies, the potential problems, those real-world examples.
I think one of the biggest things I've realized is that YouTube's more than just like a place to watch funny videos.
Right.
It's like its own little world
It really is.
with its own rules and its own economy, even its own
It's
politics.
kind of like a mini version of society in a way.
Yeah, with all the good and bad that comes with that. So if you're thinking about starting a channel,
Yeah.
it's not enough to just be creative and passionate.
Right.
You got to be smart about the business side of things too.
Mm.
Like treat it like an actual business.
Yeah, with a plan, a strategy,
Know the rules.
and be ethical.
Build a brand that people can trust.
Mm.
And for viewers, I think this deep dive has given us a whole new way of looking at the content we watch. Like we might start noticing things we didn't pay attention to before. Like the way creators use titles and thumbnails, the products they promote.
It's about being more aware,
More critical.
understanding that there's a lot going on behind the scenes.
And that our choices as viewers actually matter.
Exactly.
And we support creators who are making good quality ethical content. We're helping to shape the future of YouTube.
We're saying this is the kind of content we want to see more of.
So what's the big takeaway here?
I think it all comes down to this. Knowledge is power.
The more you know about how YouTube works,
The better you'll be able to navigate it.
whether you're a creator, a viewer,
Or just someone who's curious about this whole online world.
be informed, ask questions, make good choices.
And remember, YouTube's always changing.
The rules are always evolving.
So stay engaged, stay curious, and stay informed.
That's it for this deep dive. We went deep into YouTube monetization, all those complex policies, the things that can trip you up, the ethical dilemmas.
Real-world cases, hypotheticals.
We even talked about the impact of these policies on the entire platform.
It's a big topic.
Hopefully you learned something new
Hopefully it gave you a new perspective.
and maybe even inspired you to think more critically about the role of online platforms in our lives.
Until next time, keep on YouTubing.